This is the Bonneville Up to Speed podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oeste, and this is a podcast dedicated to all things land speed racing, from vintage small displacement motorcycles to cutting-edge streamliners and everything in between. And while we normally have a special guest on these shows, today I thought we would do something a little bit differently and go back in time to get a different vantage point of a very famous moment in land speed racing history. We recently had Danny Thompson as a guest on the Bonneville Up to Speed podcast, and he shared the story of how his father, Mickey Thompson, was pursuing Englishman John Cobb's land speed record as Mickey became the first person to go 400 miles per hour in a piston-driven vehicle. And unfortunately, that was not an official record, which left John Cobb's record of 394 miles an hour standing, set back in 1947. Well, today, we're peeling back the pages of time to read directly from an article called Cool Run for an Old Hot Rodder. Craig Breedlove broke the world land speed record without pushing his tricycle jet to its upper limits. Written by Hayes Gorey, this article comes straight from the August 19th issue of Sports Illustrated magazine. The early morning air was cool. Resting impressively on the vast Bonneville salt flats of western Utah was a missile-shaped, three-wheeled vehicle that looked like a fighter plane ready for takeoff, except that it had no wings. Near the machine, which soon was to cause international arguments as to what it really was, automobile, earthbound aircraft, or motorcycle, stood Craig Breedlove, short and pleasantly youthful in a lightweight blue pullover, matching trousers, and dark blue sneakers. He was sipping ice water and trying, with only moderate success, to look casual. "Sure, I'm nervous," he finally snapped at a questioner. At 6:25 a.m., Breedlove stopped sipping the ice water. "That's all the breakfast I want now," he said. He eyed the clear blue sky overhead and then spotted something wrong. Taking out his handkerchief, he climbed up to the cockpit of the Spirit of America. He wiped a spot off the green-tinted plexiglass canopy and stepped down. Carefully, he stuffed cotton in both ears, put on a helmet and wrap-around goggles, and climbed into the cockpit. Crewmen helped him fasten a yellow air mask. In his own description, Breedlove said he looked like a man from Mars in pajamas, but now he was ready. In a raspy voice, LT Ben Torres, an official with the U.S. Auto Club, called out, "Zero wind at the south test, and she's all clear." This was the time, and these were the words Breedlove had waited 4 years to hear. The Spirit of America inched forward, its jet engine shrieking. It gathered speed rapidly, and soon it was a speck, seemingly headed straight through the orange sun to the southeast. And then it disappeared. "33 minutes later, the monster, twin parachutes billowing in its wake, came back. When it had rolled to a stop, Breedlove flipped back the canopy and hopped lightly to the ground. He had already heard that he had gone through the first measured mile midway down the 9.5-mile track at 388.47 miles per hour. Fast, but not fast enough to break the world's land speed record of 394.196 set by England's John Cobb in 1947. Whether Breedlove had attained the goal he had so long sought, and toward which Shell Oil Company and Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, depended upon the speed of his return run. In all such record attempts, 2 runs in opposite directions are required, negating any possible wind advantage. Torres, pressing a set of earphones close to his head, was in touch with the timer stand 4¼ miles away. Unsmiling, Breedlove stood silently in the middle of a small group of project officials, crewmen, reporters, and photographers. His head was down, and he desultorily moved a foot around in the soft salt. The weight and the silence were oppressive. "Craig," Breedlove was asked finally, "you said the other day you could tell how fast you were going in test runs by the way the mile markers flipped by. How did they flip on this last trip?" "It felt like about 425, Breedlove answered. Then the small circle gasped. Torres held a hand microphone up to his mouth. The timer stand was reporting. "Repeat that," he demanded. Then, 428.37, and the average? 407.45. A new man. Craig Breedlove's taut, wind and sun-tanned face wrinkled into the first grin he allowed himself all day. He embraced his crew members, project officials, newsmen, and total strangers. He signed autographs, and when his wife Lee arrived from the timer stand, he gave her the warmest embrace of all. "We did it, huh?" he said over and over. "We did it, didn't we?" "How did it feel?" everyone asked. "What's it like to go 400 miles an hour over the salt?" "Great!" shouted the now uninhibited Breedlove. "Great!" "I don't think the limit has been reached yet," Breedlove declared. "I think I can go faster." He was ready to go again right then. But first, he said, someone had better help him check the chutes, the red and white ribbed braking parachutes that eject when Breedlove touches a button near the steering wheel, killing the motor at the same time. Everything went smooth except for a few crosswinds and the chutes, Breedlove said, and explained that the chutes had released prematurely. No harm this time, but he was taking no chances. After a quick huddle with Shell officials, Breedlove decided to run the following day. And later, it was announced he would be flown to New York for personal appearances instead. Shell and Goodyear had a publicity harvest to reap. But even before Breedlove could get off the salt flats, the grandeur of his accomplishment was being questioned. Immediately, there were some who cited the rocket sled ride of Lieutenant Colonel John Stapp, a U.S. Air Force physician who was thrust across New Mexico's flat plains at 632 miles an hour in 1954. Stapp, however, had no control over the sled, and the sled, strictly speaking, did not ride on land. It was on a raised rail. In Paris, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, with cool unconcern, said the Spirit of America was not an automobile. It referred all questions concerning recognition of the record to the Fédération Internationale Motorcycliste in Geneva, which seemed pleased at the sudden attention. FIM had a category for Spirit, cycle car, classified as motor vehicles with 3 wheels, forming 3 tracks, and composed of an inseparable ensemble. Even so, it noted, the category was for piston engines. FIM promptly created a turbine class to accommodate Spirit. To the world, and even to Donald Campbell, this was so much nitpicking. In Australia, where Campbell was completing arrangements for another try at the world land speed record next spring in his $4 million Bluebird, he said, "Jolly good effort." The fact that Breedlove's car had 3 wheels instead of the conventional 4, and that it was driven by a jet engine that powered the machine by thrust rather than a piston engine that transmitted its power directly to the wheels, was beside the point. "I don't really think that's important," Campbell said. "Technically, yes, but in the eyes of the world, no. If we're to succeed in beating Cobb's record with Bluebird and fail to break Breedlove's as well, then, in my mind, we have failed. Craig Breedlove has been chasing speed records for almost as long as he can remember. In high school at Venice, California, he put together his own hot rod and set 7 speed records, one of which still stands. His goal even then was to go faster on land than any other human. Married at 17, he was divorced at 22, and the father of 3 children. He speaks of that period of his life with a mixture of remorse and concern. My wife didn't understand what this was inside me to do these things. Everybody wants to do something. People who don't have any drive never get anything done. His second marriage was to a girl who did understand this thing inside him. She was Lee, a car hop at a local drive-in who had 2 children by a previous marriage, and, like her new husband, a penchant for fast motorcycles. She can ride it with the front wheel right off the road, Breedlove boasted last week. The Breedlove's small house on Sepulveda Boulevard in West Los Angeles was soon crowded on weekends with 5 children, 2 dachshunds, and numerous mechanically minded friends who managed to pick their way through a front yard crowded with afterburners, machines, tools, spare parts, a Fruhoff trailer, and the few weeds hardy enough to grow in such a jungle. Sometimes working, he was a fireman and a local mechanic. Sometimes on unemployment compensation, Breedlove always was able to scrape together just enough money to keep his project going. Conversion at Sepulveda. The Breedloves learned to live with the 2 air duct molds 10 feet long and weighing 1,000 pounds lying on the living room floor. Breedlove jacked up the rear wall of his garage, moved it back 21 feet, and extended the roof to cover it. The garage now measures 41 feet by 20 feet and makes the attached 5-room house look like an appendage. Friends with the same enthusiasm of Breedlove's come to help. Rod Shapel, an automotive designer and project engineer at Task Corp, drew up the first blueprints. Art Russell, a model builder for Revell, carved a model out of pine to use in wind tunnel tests. Walt Sheehan, a Lockheed designer, concocted the air ducts that led from the nose to the rear section and feed air to the engine. The original engine itself came from Ed Perkins, a Los Angeles machine shop owner and a bishop in the Mormon Church. Breedlove tried many times to interest major companies in the Spirit, but until last year he had no success. Then Shell, rarely active in competitive U.S. motor circles, indicated it would be interested if Breedlove could get a tire company to go along. After extended delays, Goodyear agreed to design and build 48-inch tires, machine the wheels, and make the brakes, parts that are so interrelated that they cannot be made separately. It was like they took the world off my back, Breedlove said. Breedlove had estimated that Spirit would cost $30,000 before it was ready for Bonneville. That seemed like all the money in the world, and at the rate we began going, we thought we could build 3 cars for that price. But I spent the $30,000, and I hadn't even got out of the garage. The first engine developed problems, so Shell bought 2 more General Electric J-47 jets, similar to those used in F-86D fighter planes. The first forging of the rear axle was out of tolerance, and cost for that jumped from $300 to $3,000. And while the neighbors watched in alarm, the car grew to look like an ICBM at Cape Canaveral. It became 35 feet long and 11 feet wide, and its weight reached 3 tons. And the cost grew, too. The total was about $250,000. It was handmade, said Breedlove, but I mean made with hand tools, a little file and a screwdriver. The car is the equivalent of a prototype fighter plane that would take an aircraft company $1 million, 20,000 men, and all their machinery to build. Breedlove has been persuaded that he can gain nothing by bettering his mark now. He'll run next year, but if his mark should be surpassed this summer, he can go back to the flats within 48 hours. One challenger, Dr. Nathan Ostich of Los Angeles, has a chance. He'll be at Bonneville with his jet-powered Flying Caduceus for the fourth time, beginning on September 22nd. Last year, the Canadian-born physician had worked up to 331 miles an hour before spinning out and narrowly escaping death on his 13th run. Breedlove is not particularly concerned about competition. He believes the Spirit of America has untapped speed in her. "We didn't even have the filter screen off the engine intake," he said last week. The tires, which have tested to 624 miles an hour, were still cool. The engine ran at 95% of efficiency, but with an afterburner, it could run considerably above the critical drag number of the car, 550 miles an hour, beyond which the car resists acceleration. Something less, however, will content Breedlove. "It's easy to talk speed," he says. "Say 600 miles an hour. It's easy to add another 100 miles an hour to that. But you're talking about going too fast. Who knows what'll happen when a car goes through the sound barrier? In a plane, the shock waves dissipate. In a car, they fly off and hit the ground. They may bounce back and damage the car. They certainly won't do the track any good. 600 is pretty fast. It's not practical. But 500 or a bit more might be." Craig Breedlove, a cool hot rodder, is ready, if necessary, to find out. We hope you enjoyed this snapshot from 1963 in this Sports Illustrated article. The next year, in 1964, Breedlove became the first man to exceed 500 miles per hour on land with that jet-powered streamliner, the Spirit of America. And I thought this was timely because today, as we approach Speed Week 2023, there are several streamliners that are also knocking on the door of 500 miles an hour, but are wheel-driven, piston-driven, and turbine-driven, and not jet-powered like Breedlove. So the number stays the same, but the way to get there is vastly different. And it's all very exciting stuff. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Bonneville Up to Speed podcast. Bonneville Up to Speed is produced with the AOK of the Southern California Timing Association and is available on all major podcast platforms. Subscribe if you're into land speed racing, and be sure to visit scta-bni.org for all the latest news and the calendar of SCTA racing events at El Mirage and the Bonneville Salt Flats. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Kevin Oeste, and now you are up to speed.